So obviously on the bottom of the unit, we have a few tappings. We have our gas on our right-hand side, we have our cold, the blue shutoffs, our hot, and then our relief valve is a separate tap. It's not off the hot like you may be used to on some of the other brands. And then we have a couple of small areas like a drain right here. This is if you had to drain the condensate trap. It's not something you're probably going to be using very often.
Okay.
It's just something that if you were to loosen this, you would drain the trap that we'll see when we take this hose off right here.
Good.
And then right behind that is the actual condensate trap. So that's what's going to go down, go through your neutralizer and into that. They have that common drain going up through the units.
Yeah.
So to shut the unit off, it's simply these right here. This would be your on-off for the cold. This would be your on-off for the hot. They do kind of pull forward. They can be tough if they've never been done before. So all the way up, that would be at a right angle. That would be cold water off now. And then these other shutoffs above them, those are for draw off. So you could use that where you attach your hose and go into a bucket to flush it, test it, things like that. Above your cold, right here is your water filter. So if you were to shut the unit off here and here, you could then remove this water filter. That's just a small screen. It's going to catch some of the heavier debris that may get stuck in the units.
That was the stuff we had to clean out, Steve, during the testing of these water heaters if they weren't reading a minimum of 2.0
Correct.
gallons per minute.
Yep. So when you shut off both your cold and your hot, the unit has no way to get air in it. So if you take this out quickly, it's not just going to dump the whole unit. It might just drip kind of slowly. So it's a good idea to have a small bucket or a rag.
Yeah.
The other option you have is if you shut this, and then attach a hose to these, you can drain the whole unit into a bucket, take it out that way. You will get a little bit of water out of this, but nothing spectacular. So you can take that out. You can just clean it. It just right under this fitting. When you take that out, it does have an O-ring. There's a filter on that plug. And I can show you when we take the unit apart. You can take the filter off to clean it, just make sure the O-ring doesn't fall off.
Okay.
So then looking at the overall piping, it's pretty busy in here. You have to put a lot into a little closet. But we do have our cold water, our hot water. When our hot water is going out to the building, this right here is the heating. And the way you can tell that is the branch that goes to the mixing valve is what's going to be all the domestic. So this right here leaving is to every faucet inside the unit. This right here is going out to the hydronic air handler, which is right next to us. And then similar coming back, we have our coming back from the hydronic air handler. And then our cold water in is always at the water meter right here. So I'm sure you're going to be mostly concerned with what's going on right here, but it is a good idea to know where the hydronic air handler ball valves are because they might help you do some troubleshooting we'll talk about soon. Anytime you're working on the unit, not a bad idea to unplug it. If I were to just simply do that, there's still power everywhere inside the unit. So if you're moving your hands around in there, the board can still zap you, so it's a good idea to unplug that. And the reason I say that is when we get into the settings, it's going to be hold the down button and then hit the on off. So hold it, count to 2, then hit the on off button, and we get into what's called the status menu or the info mode.
Okay.
So while we're in that, just something that is good for you to know about inside the unit. On every unit, in case you don't have one in your maintenance space or it gets lost, we have what's called a tech data sheet. And the tech data sheet has all of the error codes, all of the service parts, and everything I'm about to tell you about this.
That's in the O&Ms I sent off to you guys last
Okay.
week.
You have that already? Did you can give that to me?
You're gonna be troubleshooting too?
Well, I have to say, sometimes you just never know when like.
Seriously, it's good to
someone-
cross-train and be knowledgeable.
Just if it's something that I could be like, Steve, I just got a call and it's like they're saying, 'cause
It's an O3 code.
Exactly,
Right.
like if I kind of,
Right.
I don't tend to try to know it all, but a little bit.
Yeah, so right here in the back is a wiring diagram, but this is the most important piece right here. This is what's called the tech data sheet. So it's on every unit, or it should be, unless someone else has already removed it. And it unfolds like a tent. Tough to get back inside the case. And that's because it's got a lot of info on it. So we have every part and piece inside the unit, every screw, every part number. So if you guys do need something later on down the road, this is an easy way to get it without saying, I have one of those tankless water heaters and I need an igniter.
Yeah.
On the back side, everything I'm about to show you about the control is right here and spells it out. Parameters, which you shouldn't have to change, those are set up from day one, really won't have to be changed much. Some of your diagnostic points, and then all your error codes. So if you don't mind, hold on to that right there. And so I got into that menu, and right now we're on status code 1 and it's saying 0. And that status code 1 on that side is showing you that number 1 is water flow, and it's in tenths of a gallon per minute. So if I go up to number two should say outgoing temperature. And so this unit's outgoing temperature is 80 degrees, and it's measuring it right at that thermistor right there. So a lot of times if this says 80, I can also kind of grab right under here and say, okay, does that feel like 80 degrees?
Sure.
Just to know, is it not hot right here and we have an issue, or is it something to do with the mixing valve?
Right.
And you can scroll through a lot of those. 1 and 2 are the most common. What's my current water flow and what's my outgoing temperature? Something else that's not bad to know is number 8 and 11. So 8 is my incoming water temperature. So what do I have coming in the unit? And again, because we're not running, it's very similar to my outgoing. And then number 11, that's my heat exchanger temperature. And that's this sensor right here. So the heat exchanger is a little warmer just because it hasn't cooled off as fast as, you know, water piping that's been sitting there. Just a little bit, this might be too technical, but just because I like to give more info, and if you don't need it, you don't have to ever look at it again. How the unit operates. So let's get this control out of the way. And what happens is when we have water, cold water come in the unit, the unit knows that it has to get to whatever you set this controller for. So 140 is what they should all be set for. So it wants to get 140 at that sensor. It's its only job in life is to get water 140 safely. So water comes in. This control valve right here is a servo. That's going to control how much water either bypasses and goes right out the unit, or how much water goes through the heat exchanger. So we have water coming in the heat exchanger, gas valve, venturi, blower, burner is right under here with our igniter and our flame rod.
Okay.
So we're going to have water going through the unit, it's getting heated up, it's coming out of our heat exchanger. We know how hot it is coming out of the heat exchanger, and it's coming down. So at this point, if we know we're coming out of the heat exchanger too hot, we mix more cold water in to mix it down. If we're coming out not hot enough, then we would close this valve and force more water to be heated up.
Sure.
So then once we get here, that's how we control and get to 140 plus or minus a couple degrees. And this valve right here controls how much flow is going through the unit. So these units can do about 4 gallons a minute. If a homeowner turned everything on in their unit and tried to draw 5 gallons a minute, the unit's going to say, I can't heat 5 gallons.
Yeah.
So instead of giving them cold water, I'm going to throttle that flow down and only give them 4. So the end user is going to see a little bit of a pressure drop, but they're always going to have hot water. So again, that's why this is so important, because the unit's always trying to make set point right at this sensor.
Okay.
So just we can do a little show and tell. Do you mind turning on any faucet? Hot water? Thank you very much. So we have the unit that just fired up. Easy way to tell if it's fired up, if you can't hear it, is that light right there.
Yep.
If that says in use, that means there's actively fire inside the chamber. You can actually see it inside there. I can't change the temperature when the water's running, that's a safety. So now that the water's running, I hold the down button, count to 2, hit on off. And that kitchen faucet is doing exactly 1 gallon a minute, because it's a tenth of a gallon.
Yep.
If I hit the up button, the water's leaving this unit at 138 degrees. And then hopefully this mixing valve is mixing it down probably to somewhere in the 125 range. So that's an easy, if the homeowner says I don't have hot water at my faucet, this is kind of the first thing to check. Do I have flow? Yes. Do I have hot water leaving the unit? Yes. And so that says 140. 140 is pretty hot, but I can grab it quickly. That's absolutely hot water. So if they didn't have hot water at their faucet, I would know it's a problem outside of the water heaters from here down. And it's normally would be the mixing valve. Whereas if this unit just was not turning on, and I had a flow of 0, then I would wonder, am I even putting water through the unit? And what can happen then sometimes is a cross connection in the unit. Something like the hot and cold in the back of a washing machine or a shower cartridge valve. So an easy way to test that is, if I were to shut this off right here, hook up a hose and squirt it into a bucket and the unit turns on, that tells me that instead of the water going through the water heater, it's going somewhere else. So again, it's usually either a check valve in here is stuck or something outside of that water heater. So easy way to tell if it's a water heater issue or a plumbing issue is just by looking at that flow rate and looking at that outgoing temperature.
Okay.
All right? Perfect, thank you very much. Likewise, same thing's gonna happen when somebody runs heat. Because the heat's running, the thermostat's gonna send a signal to the air handler. Air handler is gonna call on, it's gonna turn on its pump. And the unit doesn't know if it's heat or hot water, it just knows the pump's causing flow. So you can check the flow of that pump by looking at your flow rate there as well. That's, I think, most of it in a nutshell.
Yep. Any questions, Steve or Diane?
So I just have a question, more dealing with, the heat system.
Yeah.
So I've run into this, a little bit, at other properties, not necessarily with Rinnai heaters, but, with the A.O. Smiths. So like in the winter, we'll have somebody that, will say, you know, I have no hot water. So we'll go to the unit and we'll turn the water on, and the water heater will turn on.
Mm-hmm.
Run, and then basically, you know, we'll say, okay, you know, we'll take a look at something or whatever. And then we realized when we were in there, their heat was running.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as you turn the heat off, you had no more hot water.
Yep, so that's usually the check valve.
Yeah.
And an easy way to test that is, that's why I pointed out it's a good idea to know where the hot and cold to the unit are.
Yeah.
There should be a check valve somewhere, and it may be in the unit, but most often, so we have our cold water coming in here, this is our hot water out, cold water to the building, let's see. So our cold water comes up, that's the return from the heat. This is to my mixing valve. Where's my unit? This is busy, my unit's down here, okay. So somewhere on these runs should be a check valve.
Yeah, that was my question, because I didn't see one.
Yep. And it may be in the unit on the pump. Sometimes those pumps will have an integral check valve. But the easy way to tell is, again, so when the heat's not running,
Yeah.
if they don't have any hot water, you'd be able to see that by pulling up the flow rate.
Yeah.
And then what you would do is shut off the heating coil. So
Yeah.
now what that does, and you can shut off either side, but what it does is if you follow the cold water from the water meter, the cold water comes in, it kind of wraps around. Here's my main shut off. My cold goes out to the building. Keep following it over. My cold can go up to my Rinnai, or it can go up to my heating, right? And now here's where you just have to kind of play plumber, and the water's lazy, it's gonna take the path of least resistance.
Yep.
So if you open a faucet, it wants to get to this point right here, right?
Yep.
What's the easiest way to get there?
Through the cold.
So the easiest way is if I come up,
Yeah.
I can take a left right here and go through the water heater and come out the hot and get there, or I can go up to my coil.
Yep.
And often what happens is it says it's easier to go up and through that coil
Yep.
than it is to go up and through this coil, because this coil is much smaller.
Yep.
So an easy way would be don't allow it
Yep.
to go through that coil.
Yeah.
So if you do that and all of a sudden you register a flow rate, you know it's a leaking check valve.
Yeah. And that's typically what we'll do to check it, to you know, shut the coil off.
Yep.
And then see if it comes back on, and then, you know, kind of. That was just the only reason I asked is I didn't see the check valve in the closet.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I don't either, so you're not crazy.
Yeah.
It might be that it's in the unit. It does look like they have one check valve here, but that's probably for the water main.
Yeah.
Because again, if the cold water's coming up,
Yeah.
then I have nothing stopping it this way, so it
Right.
should be either be.
above the shut off.
Yep, and or it could be on this side as well, but I again don't see it. So I'm guessing that they have them in the pump on those units,
Okay.
because when we just turned the faucet on, it ran no problem.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, that's the easiest way is pull up, walk into the unit,
Yep.
turn on a faucet, pull up the flow rate if I'm at 0, shut the coil off, and if all of a sudden my flow rate goes up, I know it's leaking by.
Yep.
The other easy way is if your coil's running and your pipe is hot,
Yep.
if you were to shut the heat down and that pipe is hot, and then as soon as you shut it down, the pipe immediately cools off,
Yeah.
that has to be because cold water's flowing through it.
Backflowing,
Yeah,
yeah.
so again, it's because that check valve's leaking by. But usually it's easier to just shut the valve off as long as the valve's in good working order.
Yep. Okay.
And then to get out of the menu, it'll stay in this whether you turn power on or power off. So that light, that means power's off.
Yep.
I'm still in the menu. So it's the same way to get out. Hold down, count to 2, and then hit on off.
Okay.
Now the unit's off, now the unit's on. There is one other thing that's pointed out in there that you should be able to know is the error codes.
Yep.
It'll save up to the last 9, and
Okay.
it saves them in order. And how to get into the error codes is hold the on off, count to 2, then hit the up button. So our most recent error code, number 1 was an 11, and then 2 is a dash, 3 is a dash, and so on. So dash means it doesn't have any more.
There's no code, yeah.
it'll
Okay.
save up to 2 of the same error code in a row.
Yeah.
So if it said 1 and 11, and then 2
Two.
and 11, and then 3 was dash dash,
Yeah.
that means you could have had 1,000 11s. It's only
Okay.
gonna save 2 because it doesn't wanna wipe the rest of the history.
Right,
Um,
okay,
So 11, you're gonna see 11 on probably every one of these units, because when they first turn it on, if the gas wasn't fully bled, it's
Yeah.
gonna miss that first ignition.
okay,
To get out of it, same way, on, off, up arrow. Now, something that's probably not a bad idea to do if you're ever working on a unit, since it doesn't date and time those errors, if you hold the up arrow, the down arrow, on, off, it'll say FF,
Mhm.
so it'll flash that a couple times. And then now if we check the error history again, 1 is an FF, it's called factory flag. So
okay,
now we know that we've been here and addressed that code 11.
Yeah.
So if you come back in 6 months on another complaint, you check the error history. If there's a new error code, you'll see it. If it still says FF, it's
Yeah.
not an error. It might be, like you said, a leaking check valve or something else.
okay,
So that'll just maybe help you and your team know if you actually addressed the issue or not, or if it came back once you
Right.
thought, hey, we replaced the igniter and we think that was it. And 6 months later, you come back and there's a new 11.
Yeah.
Obviously, it wasn't the igniter.
okay,
So really, the on-off, count to 2 and on, that's the error codes, and it's on that tech data sheet.
Yeah.
Down button, count to 2, on-off, that's the maintenance mode.
Yeah.
Those are really the only 2 you should have to do. Up, down, and on-off is the FF, and that's in the install manual, it's not in that.
oh, okay,
Yeah,
alright.
but it is in the INO.
okay. Awesome,
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
thank you very much.
That's great.
Do you have any of these?